Madam President, on Sunday, just 2 days ago, I held a town meeting in Montpelier, Vermont, on the issue of saving the Postal Service. And I was frankly stunned by the number of people who came. As you know, Vermont is not the largest state in the country, and yet we had some 350 people crowding into the cafeteria at Montpelier High School to say very clearly that they do not want to see the Postal Service dismembered. They do not want to see policies developed which will create a death spiral for the post offices of America. And we heard a lot of testimony from many people. And bottom line is that everybody in that room thought that it was terribly wrong that in the midst of a recession, the post office is talking about cutting 120,000 good-paying jobs in our country. Didn't make sense to anybody in that room. I come from a rural state, and post offices are extremely important to the people of small towns above and beyond getting mail. They become, in a sense, in some ways, the identifying feature of a small town. It's where people come together and they talk. It is very important, in my mind, not to pell-mell start cutting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of small post offices in rural America. And the legislation that we will be offering this week addresses that problem in, I think, a sensible and reasonable way. Second of all, the Postal Service can never be competitive if when you drop a letter into a postal box, it takes 5 days for that letter to get to its destination. And one of the ideas that the Postal Service is talking about is making very significant cuts in what they call processing centers. That's where the mail is gathered and forwarded. And if you cut those centers, and in my state, we have two that are on the line, one in Essex Junction and one in Wright River Junction. And if you cut those and you cut other processing centers all over the country, what will happen is that when you drop that letter into a mailbox, it could take up to 5 days for that letter to reach its destination. And when you have that poor service, people simply are going to stop using the post office, and that continues the death spiral. People are not going to want to use the service. Thirdly, and in the same vein, the Postal Service is now talking about cutting Saturday delivery. And again, that means that there are a whole lot of folks who get prescription drugs on Saturday. There are a whole lot of people who get a magazine or newspapers on Saturday. You cut that back, and people are going to say, no, I don't want to deal with the post office anymore. It's not worth it. So it seems to me that the choice we have is to do what the Postal Service is now talking about, and that is cut and eliminate rural post offices, end Saturday mail delivery, cut out and eliminate significant numbers of processing centers, which will slow down the delivery of mail. That is one approach. And lay off, by the way, some 120,000 American workers, including many veterans. I think that is a very bad idea. The other approach is to come up with a business model which recognizes that we are in the 21st century, that the post office has got to evolve and change, and give the post office the freedom to compete in a way that addresses the consumer needs of its customers. Let me give you an example. The presiding office comes from a rural state, as I do. A lot of people in our states want to get fishing licenses. They want to get hunting licenses. If that person walked into a post office in rural New Hampshire, rural Vermont, they say, hey, can I fill out an application and get a fishing license or a hunting license? Post office says, no, we don't do that. We don't do that. We're not allowed to do that. We're prescribed from doing that. If an individual literally wants to walk into a post office, and postmasters tell me this happens every day, and somebody says, look, I have a letter here, and I want it notarized. Could you please notarize it? They say, sorry. They may be a notary public. They're not allowed by law to notarize it. Now, the issue of the digital revolution is obviously impacting post offices not only in the United States but around the world. And other countries are looking at these challenges in a way that we are not. Give you just one more example. For a lot of reasons, legal and otherwise, there are people who would like to see a document delivered to somebody in writing and not simply in email. There are post offices now in other countries where you can send an email, say from Vermont to California, it gets printed up, and on the same day, that document gets delivered to a business or a home. Post office in America is not allowed to do that. So by law, our post office is restricted from entering the 21st century. If somebody walks into a post office now, they say, well, I want to print up 10 copies of this document. I need 10 copies. Where's your copying machine? Postmaster says, we don't have a copying machine. We're not allowed to have a copying machine. So there are a lot of ideas that are out there that people are talking about as to how the Postal Service can address the needs of customers in the 21st century. Last but not least on this issue, one of the people at the town meeting on Sunday got up and said, I just want to say this, that in our town, we know our letter carrier very well. And our letter carrier noticed that mail remained in the mailbox of an elderly person. And the mailman got on the phone, called up the police department because he suspected that something was wrong. Turned out something was wrong, and that person's life was saved. I expect that happens all over this country. We've got hundreds and hundreds of thousands of letter carriers who know people, who interact with people. They do play, and can more so play, an important role in providing services. So, bottom line, Madam President, is I think it is a bad idea in the midst of a recession to slash 120,000 jobs, including jobs of many of our veterans.